Alright everyone, I told you I would start going back to the beginning so you can start to remember some of the very basic skills that you had. So this will be the start of it. Remember, you start hopefully with the correct drawing right away. Look at your layers, make sure everything's on and thawed. That helps a lot. We started making, remember that fee box? You don't necessarily have to always do that, but it's not a bad idea, and many of you have figured out that the fee box brought in at 6 times is probably as good as bringing it in at its normal size as we start talking about what phi is and what pi is. I'll try this box, a relative approximation. Remember, a rectangle, if you're not bringing in a block with insert, you click, you don't read what it's asking, you say at, which means from the last point, 1.62 comma 1. Remember, you change anything by left clicking, you're going to the principal's office. Left clicking, spacebar, looking at your choices, and I'm going to scale that up 6 times. Many of you have to realize that you can left click and then right click and have these choices here. So don't think that you have to do everything the way I say, but you notice there how I got a little bit screwed up because I didn't say what I wanted to do. Remember that things come in as a rectangle or as a block. You can take them into the next lower kind of level of aggregation by doing an X or an explode. Remember that if something is not exploded and you offset maybe 2, everything goes with it, which is a great use. But very often you don't want that. So very often we learn to explode and then re-put back together. Remember how we put things together? By p-edit, polyline edit. You grab, you yes and J for join. That's how you put things together. Important to explode things and then polyline edit them back together. If blocks come in, you explode blocks down to the next lower thing. You explode those down. You explode, you explode. You can nest things a lot. All right, remember we do a lot by offset. There are 2 flavors of offset. Offset T for through. Right, when you go through a specific point, I'm erasing there, and offset a distance. For instance, offsetting 1. Remember, X for explode. I'll show something you can. I'm going to point out something interesting that we saw. You can have this, right, when you click on it, you see it's a line. But when you do it, you can have a polyline that is just a single run. P-edit, yes. And now when you click on it, notice it only has 2 snap points in the either side or the other way. So that's one small visual that tells you the difference between a line and a polyline. But we always want to explode those things down. Remember that if we need to go around and turn an angle, I'm going to turn this one right now. But first and foremost, how do we change the property of anything? We left click on it, we right click, we go to properties. There are better ways, obviously, but we don't change the color, we change the layer. We do not change the color, we change the layer of something. That's going to become very important later. Remember, when we want to turn an angle, I'm going to turn that angle 30 degrees. I'm going to left click. I left click anywhere, or sometimes I grab everything with a window or a crossing, but I'm going to left click and then left click over where I want to spin. Spacebar, C for copy, give it the 30 degree. That makes the copy one thing on top of the other. All kinds of different ways. But one thing I've added is the lengthen command. When you click and then right click on your command on your machine, you'll see a lengthen there. You LEN for lengthen total and give it a length maybe of 2. You grab the end you want to shorten up and there it is. You want to go again, you left click, spacebar, C, and maybe I'm going to rotate negative this time, minus 90. Many of you realize that you like to use the dynamic. The dynamic, if you have the settings correct, when you hit there, you'll only get one thing you want to change. You change the dynamic settings, of course, like most, by right-clicking, shift right-clicking, object snap settings, the dynamic input. I particularly only like one thing on, and that is the resulting dimension. All right, so that's how we go about doing do a couple more around, left-click, spacebar, rotate. I'm going to go 45 degrees. You notice there I did copy, so I'm going to do undo. You notice how much that dynamic starts to get to you. Quick property, having things on and off along the bottom here, keeping track of all those things there. Remember, you right click. If you want to see the icons, you see icons. You see right click. You don't, you do that. Left click spacebar, spacebar. C for copy. I'm going to shift 45 degrees. Remember that two lines in space will either be parallel or they will intersect if they're on a 2D plane. So I can always go F for fillet. You can change the radius. If I have a radius of maybe 0.4, I can click and click. It does something like that. We don't freak out when we go outside the box. We'll just make the box a little bit bigger next time. So sometimes you just learn to left click spacebar, 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 to scale it up twice again. Though eventually, once you have your base piece, you can get rid of the box and bring it in later. Remember that you can say fillet, and now if you really want to get good at stuff, you realize that you can hold a shift and that will fillet radius 0 for you. So you see this kind of, I don't know, maybe we'll call it a race car. Remember, we can do a lot of offsetting. We can p-edit, put things together. Yes, join, cross. We don't use the polyline multiple very often. Now I can offset, maybe T for through, and I'm going to pick a particular point right there. More likely you would have something like a circle there, and you might want to go right through that circle. Offset T for through, grab that and go through the center. Remember, don't try to grab the middle of a circle, grab the edges and let the computer grab the middle. There you go. There it is. And you notice the offsets can get kind of odd and interesting as they go. Alright, so remember that we can grab a whole set of things and then grab any point, hit spacebar, spacebar, but maybe we don't want to rotate on that point. We can B, change for base point. Maybe make the base point the middle of that. And then we can rotate maybe, I don't know, 25 degrees. Remember this command. This is a great command. You maybe have a line out here and you want to align all that stuff with that. The command is align, A-L-I-G-N. You grab all your objects. It asks for the first source point. You go from the end point perhaps. The first destination point is the end point there. The second source point, maybe I want to make that spaceship go there. The second destination point, end point there. It'll ask you more, but you don't need to give it. You hit a return. Now, this question here, you generally don't want to be scaling when you're doing this kind of work, but you could. If you said yes, it would both rotate it and scale it. Right there, you got a pretty powerful command. Remember that when you are setting up plots, and I do believe in plots, that you would insert, maybe go out to the fee box if you don't have one. I don't have one here, so I'm not going to find it. But I could just go ahead and go to the correct layer, go to the view layer, and put, remember, rectangle. Click here at 1.62, comma 1. And then if it's not big enough right away, I think we figured out 6. We're going to scale 6 times, starts to help. Remember that views are incredibly important. Also remembering what layers are on, off, red, blue. So you do things like this when you're setting up a plot. Minus V for view, W for window. Maybe plot view if you've got one. You specify your first corner, the end point there. Second corner, the end point there. You also do this, L-man. You remember the layer manager and you save it so you know that everything is set. Alright, we got a couple more minutes. Let's think of some of the other stuff. Well, perhaps one of those things that we need to know is that we're going to draw circles. We tend to draw them from the top. We have a forced choice. One thing we have is tangent, tangent, tangent. Haven't done much of that. Grab tangent to that, tangent to that, tangent to that. Puts in one circle. Another thing we have is tangent, tangent, radius very often. But fillet does most of that. We can go circle, tangent, tangent, radius. If you think about that, tangent to that, and a radius of maybe 0.2. That more or less does the same thing. If you remember, fillet radius, 0.2. Remember, you can't, it actually allows you to do it, but usually you want to avoid doing that with a polyline if these polylines go through. Add a loaf, line, offset, fillet. array. So we haven't really done much with an array, but an array is not a bad command to teach you right now. Array sits right here. You have copy, move, which we can use. We have mirror, offset. Array looks like this. I use minus array. I select my objects. I said, in this case, I'm going to do a polar. I'm going to grab the center of the array. Maybe it's right there. Number of items in the array may be 6, and degrees 360. It's going to be what? And then rotate. Yes, there you go. You have your array. Thanks for listening. We'll keep going on that. That's a lot of the skills you should start, at least being able to understand what I just did. Thanks for listening.